Hello everybody!
Hi, good to see you.
Welcome to yet another episode of Tuesday Talks, and I'm Harsh from Fun Academy.
And I'm Sanna from Fun Academy as well.
And today we have a very exciting talk lined up for you because we are going to take a fun learning classroom tour where we take you around our classroom and show you the little inspiring and practical ideas that we have implemented that we hope you would be able to take into your classrooms already from tomorrow. So we are again coming to you live from Vantaa in Finland from our partner kindergarten, and let's take the tour.
Yeah, let's take a tour to the Roleplay Room. And with the Roleplay Room, we're so super lucky in this particular kindergarten to have a space that is a room for all of the children in this huge kindergarten to be able to visit and do their roleplay work. But let's have a little look at what kind of things we have in this room and what we can implement also in other kinds of venues and classrooms potentially.
Okay, so now I'm going to switch the camera, and then together with Sanna we will go around the room.
Okay, here we are looking at Lifeskill Icons. And Lifeskill Icons are connected to the life skills that we're hoping to help the children develop before they go to primary school. So the life skills that are things that are taught in Finnish primary school, but we want the children to get ready for those life skills already before they go to school. And when we design a classroom environment or outdoor environment or the entire school or even the curriculum, we're looking at how to promote and how to help the children learn about different life skills. And we use these cards and these icons as a helper. So when we're looking at, for example, the physical environment, in connection to communication and collaboration, or maybe technology and information media, decision-making, problem-solving. We're trying to think of the environment as something that can support, looking at the environment as an assistant teacher at best. So even when we go into the role play area of the Roleplay Room, we can see many things that are pretty obvious. So we have outfits and uniforms for the children, and we can be thinking of how is role play as free play connected to the life skills, but we can also be thinking about how does role play as such just emphasize and support the beauty of free play. So we have beautiful costumes and we have this wonderful environment for the children to be pulling from when they do their role play activities, when they play, when they perform, and when they present. But at the same time, it's connected to the life skills, and that's important for a teacher to understand.
Yeah. Sanna, before we move on, should we explain to our viewers that we are currently in a kindergarten with a lot of space, so we have some dedicated spaces, but it might be different for our viewers?
Absolutely. So yes, we're happy to be in a kindergarten where we have this beautiful big space for all of the kindergartners, all of the preschoolers in this facility to be able to visit. We don't mean that every kindergarten should have a dedicated role play area, but we can kind of think of what kind of inspiration can we take from this role play area that we will be using in a small classroom environment that sometimes would also like to offer this kind of role play opportunities. And in that type of a case, what we would be saying that maybe it's not smart to have this setting there all the time taking up so much space, but when we have decided to have some dedicated time for role play, then we would bring in this kind of a little setup for a time being. Or then we have some smaller role play area with a little bit less of the items. And one important component of a role play area in our thinking is the inspirational materials that we can have to inspire the children to be maybe working with a particular theme, or then just drawing from these inspirational materials to freely start playing and freely start performing and presenting something. When we bring the globe and letter A with the word apple, and then we have an interesting building, a crown, and then some art here, this might inspire the children to be looking at traveling or the globe or the world, things that we might be having in our curriculum. or then they just pull something totally different. And in the name and respect of child participation, we should be able to watch the children and think about why are the children trying to play something and why should they be allowed to play this play that they have decided to work on together. So the observation of the adult is again in a very, very like big role. So these are here for inspiration, and time to time we should be changing the inspirational materials and then again seeing what the children would like to do with these objects and things that they find here. But this is not only about role play. Like in addition to role play, we can also be doing categorization and like supporting the sense of order of these young children. So one thing that we still need to be doing in this this area here is like bring in places for the children to be categorizing, like hats, and a place for them to put their accessories, and a place for the children to be putting, you know, the tops or the bottoms of their outfits. So categorizing the objects that they find in this environment is also part of the role play.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point, because all these outfits and clothes we see behind in the rack and also down there, of course, the little ones can wear them and let their imagination run wild, but also it could be an activity where they sort these clothes out according to color or what kind of roles do these clothes belong to. Is it perhaps a superhero or a profession that they're interested in, or as such?
Absolutely. And then also we're like thinking of how to connect objects that we find in the role play room to curricular objectives or objectives and aims that we have in other environments, for example in the crafts and art room that we have in this kindergarten. So we've brought in real oil painting for the children to be like admiring, also being inspired for their artwork, but then also counting, looking at colors, maybe understanding that this technique can also lend to a totally different kind of oil painting artistry. So inspiring the children also to do other things that will happen outside this particular part of the kindergarten. And then as a smart adult, then we also prepare the environment in the art room to be able to like continue from here if the children are inspired by something that they find here. So listening to the children and watching them, but of course preparing the environment with suitable inspirational materials, like in this case.
Yeah, it might be, as for me, for some of our viewers, not the most common sight to have paintings done by artists hung in kindergartens, because you know we said the children do the paintings and they hang the paintings themselves. So I think it's quite significant to also introduce them to artists as professions and also as inspiration, and also for sort of cultural appreciation.
Yes, and I think one important component is respecting the child with something potentially valuable. So showing that a real piece of art can be at a child's level. Also, at the same time, helping the children respect real art and trying to talk about art coming from other human beings and how creativity is taken in consideration and part of the creation of art. The most important art, of course, is art made by children, and we will be talking about that at another time in another room in this classroom, but we just wanted to mention here that it is absolutely okay and fine and good to show real art to children for inspirational reasons, but without telling the child to copy. So we don't think that the kids should be copying what they see, but pulling like inspiration from that and then talking about creativity and art. And also artists as a like profession, looking at all different kinds of professions, art included.
Yeah. And just one more interesting point there, the two pieces of art are quite different.
Absolutely, and that's also super interesting to discuss, and then see what the children paint or draw or discuss after seeing these totally two different kinds of pieces of art that they can be seeing in this role play environment.
Absolutely, and should we move to the next section?
Yes, let's move to the next section. Yes, maybe on the way we could mention the icons that we have in this environment. Here we have icons with a group of children, a couple of children and one child. These remind the child, the teacher, and also visiting parents about the environment being meant and designed for groups of children working on some projects and some activities. And then there can be two children or a smaller group working at a different activity. And we also have space and need to have space for one individual child to be working alone in peace and calm. This reminds us constantly about how to design and build and construct prepare classrooms and learning environments for children so that the environment supports these different activities. One idea is that it's much more manageable to be working with a group of children when they are doing different things, if they're really focused and inspired and wanting to work on what they're doing. So helping the children find something that they're interested in, focused and wanting to work on. So yeah, we can like pass this iconography here that is meant for adults and children alike. And part of the icons and signs that we have in the kindergarten are, up high, meant for the adult to be reading and understanding, and some of the icons are down at the child's level, those icons that we mean for the child to be like reading and interpreting. So here we are in another spot in this role play environment where we're talking about gardening and taking care of plants, so it's care and empathy and biology. We actually here see a plant that we didn't do so good a job of taking care of, which is also an important learning. If we forget to water the plant, or if we water it too much, what happens then? And then we also decided to have a look at maybe different ways of watering plants. And when we water the plants with this type of a system, we're also talking about physics, we're talking about absorption, and we're talking about how the plants then get the water more subtly than if we pour all the water from our watering can to the plant. And this corner also allows us to talk about tidying places and wiping the table and how to clean up after a particular activity. And when the children are doing these kinds of cleanup activities, they feel capable and strong and very independent. So we're serving them with the opportunity of feeling good about themselves, taking care of something and tidying up after that little work session.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I just have to say that we are having a very sunny day today, so having slightly some lighting issues impacting our video, but I hope it's clear. But also on the same note, we don't always have sun outside. So this is still a way to bring gardening elements indoors.
Absolutely. And when we take care of plants, it's interesting that then the children start getting interested in more gardening activities, both outdoors and indoors, and these children here are now wanting to plant some seeds so that they can actually see the plant grow from seed onwards. So that's something that we're going to do in this environment next, and preparing the environment for that. So when we do something with the children, then we listen to the children and try and understand what would be an interesting activity to follow the previous one. So in this case, it absolutely is planting seeds and then seeing what happens next.
Yeah. Absolutely. And also to talk about this interesting, very large and comfortable chair. I mean, definitely not child size.
This is not a child-size chair. This is for adults, but it's also for, cuddling with a child and reading with a child, for example, and talking. But the main purpose for having a chair like this in an environment for free play and role play is for teacher observation. It's a very important and big job, a big responsibility of the teacher, as we think in Fun Academy and under the Fun Learning approach. So it's important to plan, and then it's important to prepare the environment. And once the environment is prepared with items and opportunities that we see fit and important for the child and our group, knowing our own children, then we can just sit and watch and see how things flow in the environment. And of course, correcting the environment as we go. Fun learning environment is dynamic. But when the teacher sits here and observes, the teacher is doing very important work, understanding, hearing, seeing every individual child, and getting ready for documentation. And after documentation, the teacher gets back to planning and preparing, and then observing, and then documenting again. So it's a beautiful cycle that happens. And I see this chair as a symbol of that work. So when a teacher sits here, the teacher is doing a very important part of their work.
Yeah. And I think that's an extremely important point, because it might be considered that a teacher sitting in a comfortable chair, is that idling?
Right, yeah.
But
yes.
It's not.
It's not idling. And yes, the teacher might physically look very inactive and lazy at that moment, but there should be a lot going on in the teacher's head at that moment, and I trust that's what's going on, and therefore we have these comfortable chairs for the teachers to be working from.
Absolutely, absolutely. And moving on to some more infographics we have over here.
Yeah, we have some more like of these icons or infographics images that the teachers are using in circle time, discussing about of the time of the day and saying polite things like bon appetit and good night and welcome. So circle time activities really. And here we have more of the images that that the teachers use together with the children, maybe also helping them to understand that next we go to lunch after we've had our free play session here, and then we remind ourselves and the children about the importance of saying thank you or I'm sorry if something accidentally happens. So talking about good manners and collaboration and just, learning to be together.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, these signs, as our viewers can see, are in Finnish.
These signs are in Finnish.
Because we're coming to you from Finland, but the idea is that you would use whichever the wonderful language that you speak in your country and create similar signs to help the little ones navigate around.
Absolutely, and we of course have these signs also in English and in Chinese, based on the fact that we work also in Chinese and English languages, but in this particular case we have them in Finnish.
Wonderful. And now to one of the most exciting parts of this room.
Yeah, the shop. Yes, here we have a shop. So this is set up as a free play area for playing shopkeeping, playing the customer, which is a tremendous fun for the children. And we've been setting this shop element up as part of our entrepreneurial studies, in addition to it being just a fantastically fun play for the children. And they pretty much are able to set up this play as they go and as they best wish. And we want to also use recycled materials, so bringing these purchasable items from home for the children to be shopping. And so what they do here is they figure out what they want to be buying, who are they buying things for, they're counting, and then they're also using money from their little cash register here, and again doing their calculations. And part of this play seems to be also about good manners, so they're saying thank you and you're welcome, and they're saying things like, may I help you pack your bag, and can I help you carry your basket. So there are many interesting things that are going on with the children are playing shop here. A shop might be something that you want set up pretty much as a stationery in your preschool and kindergarten. But if there's not enough room to keep it going throughout the year, it's something that you can just bring in and bring out. And in our case, we also have packed it in these easy to store boxes. So it's easy to set up and easy to put back in the storage room when we do not have space for this store, or we want something else to be happening in this part of the environment. But this has been tremendous fun.
And I think that this is one of the main things that kids enjoy. Being part of and playing shopkeeper and customer and
they like
etc.
that. And again, we can be looking at our life skill principles and thinking about what different life skills are the children actually learning when they are playing shop. So setting up a PlayStation is for inspirational reasons. We're putting things out for the children to be inspired by and to then think of their own play. And sitting in the chair observing, we can be thinking about, okay, what things are they actually developing? What are they learning to master when they're playing this, instead of us teaching them or telling them something? And then if we need to help them learn something that they're not coming up with themselves, we can of course do that. But that's more of a supportive job that we have in this type of a learning environment. And then we're back to more icons and iconography. Here we're talking, of course, we have the weather, again, pretty typical circle time material, but also nice to be looking at the weather when the day goes by. In the morning we might have overcast weather, but now we're getting to a more sunnier phase, so the children can be marking themselves, like what does the weather look like now, and discussing that in connection to these icons. And here we're in English using the weekdays, enriching the environment with some small words in English, even though this kindergarten is a Finnish kindergarten. The children might be marking the date here, learning about numbers, and it's the 16th, and today is Tuesday. And what's interesting even for younger children is to be looking at the days of the week and seeing that we're now living Tuesday and we still have a few days to go before the weekend. So they're kind of understanding where they are in the division of the week.
Yeah.
So.
And you, as you can see, we are doing very fun things during the weekend here.
Yeah. She looks like she's resting Saturday. She's had a very tough week in kindergarten.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, and now to the corner here.
The corner here is about mathematics and numbers. This is an example of how we can just have something sit in the environment without really teaching the children about something, but then we see the children noticing the numbers from 0 to 10 here, and then they start noticing that we also have cards with amounts here under the actual number, so the number 2 and 2 feathers. And then when we have some objects here near this setup, the children just somehow seem to be able to start doing things like this. We had little cars here previously, but some of our cars have just disappeared somewhere. And then we brought animals, and we're now seeing whether the children are just as able to be counting these animals as they were able to count the cars. But what happens is that they start just like counting without counting. And when we see one like bigger child here doing this type of an activity, placing these objects quite correctly in many cases here, the right amount under the number here, then we see the younger children trying to copy the bigger kids and kind of grasping what's going on here. So this is like an interesting way to, without teaching, just letting the children learn about mathematics and bringing math into the environment in surprising places, also in the Roleplay Room. And one absolutely fantastic place for mathematics is in the eating room, and that's a perfect place for talking about numbers and amounts.
Yeah, and just to say that this is of course a wonderful way to learn numbers, because we would sit and write from 1 to 100 and count over and over, whereas this is a very practical and a fun way to remember them.
It is. It's easier also to remember something when you're actually doing something with it. So you're not just sitting, but you're moving something and you're moving yourself. It's also in your muscle memory more easily. And then as an extension or a different kind of option for play with numbers and amounts, we have a tray, and the child has his own or her own little mat. That means that this is my little environment, this is my piece of work, so we're not allowed to step on the mat when the child rolls it out and focuses here. So this is like a little world play as such, so we're just playing with little objects, but this is also a math activity that's an extension from this number thing that we have up there. So we have amounts 3, 2, and 4, and then the children find objects that they can also be counting and then placing as they see fit. And this also pretty automatically happens once they've seen this activity once going on. And then they place the objects that they find on the tray to match the amounts that they find here. And this is also something that when the older children work on something like this, the smaller kids follow and try and copy. And of course, in a playful environment like ours, we're not saying that this is how you have to play with these items that we've placed here. They just might be like figuring out how to create a tent with these sticks and stones, and then placing the animals to live in their habitat that the kids are developing and creating for them, and hopefully they bring more into this play as well. So child participation for us is super important. Listen, hear what the children want to do, and let them add to the activities and observe and try to understand what it is that's interesting for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And just right here, we went from mathematics to biology and just building habitats for animals.
Yes, and naming things at the same time. So there are so many different activities that just like come out of a play like this when the adult has planned it well and thought through like what kind of things will come out of this, and then maybe we will be next reading a book about animals. That the children have been playing with here. So the orientation is already taken care of, and the bridge is built, so then the next hop to reading a book about these animals is pretty natural, and they might already be asking about that.
Absolutely. And if I may just cut back to here, we showed earlier these 3 symbols of individual, child, working with a partner and group, and we just went through activities where you could, in a group, work in this shop, perhaps, and then over here you have the individual little my own world.
Yes.
And then perhaps this again you can do by yourself or with a partner perhaps, and also in a group. So in the same space, these children could be working in different size groups or alone at the same time.
Absolutely. And that's one of the main things that we need to be looking at when we're preparing the environment. For all those different kind of activities to be happening at the same time for many reasons, and one is a much more manageable group of children, but then also for them to be able to be focusing on maybe their like sensitive period or something that they are now really interested in. And when the teacher is observing, the teacher understands when we need to allow the child to be continuing some particular piece of work that they've taken upon themselves.
Yeah, brilliant. So now to yet another interesting activity.
So you want the car activity. So here we have, again, a recycling opportunity. We've taken a piece of cardboard, just painted it black and turned it into a slope for our cars. And of course this is something just like fun to play with, so we have our cars just drop off the slope. But again, when we see the children playing with this and then starting to compete, maybe using our tunnel, starting to compete, like whose car drives furthest, we kind of naturally get to measuring. So then we can be like measuring whose car was like got the furthest. So we can be like turning this into a measuring activity without telling the child that, hey, we're going to measure stuff, but like through the interest of the child, we get to do activities that we actually have intentionally planned for them to do, but we don't have to force them. So through this excitement of playing with the cars, we get to something that we want them to explore in more detail.
Absolutely. And this activity is so successful that the tiny humans have been taking the cars with them.
Yeah, we only have 3 left.
Most likely to practice, we hope.
Absolutely. They're probably practicing more measurements with their little cars.
Okay, and then we have a really nice space over here.
Yes, here, a tent. We believe that every environment for children should have a safe place for the children to be able to go for a moment to, sulk or rest or just be alone. And a tent is a nice, close place for them, but it can be any kind of little hut that we allow the children to go to when they need to be alone. But in this particular case, we've also hidden our treasure chest into the tent, and the treasure chest is something that is used for orientation, also inspiration for play. We can hide something exciting into the chest and then see what the children start talking about. And then, in the name of child participation, maybe continue on what they came up with, or use that hidden surprise object to, again, bridge it to something that we're going to talk about with the children. Maybe talking about winning and losing in connection to this car activity that we just had. But hiding something and then having the children be surprised by what we have hidden in a chest might be something super interesting to try and test.
Yeah, and I think this also raises an important point of giving the child a space to hide out if they need to, because learning is not all about forcing every child to come and be in a group all the time and be active. Everybody needs their own time and their own pace.
And someone needs more of that time alone than others, and we need to be respecting that. So respecting the children with time on their own, and then time in the group. And sometimes this tent just turns into the shop, so suddenly all of our shop items are in this little department store, and that's also fine. So this is the children's environment, and we need to be respecting the children with the choices that they make here, and we observe, and then plan again.
Absolutely. And now, before we wrap up, we can perhaps talk about this signage.
Yes, well, in this case, we're using the signage to help the children understand what's going on in the next room. So all the signs that are at eye level of the children are meant for them to be interpreting and reading. So here we understand, and the children do too, that we have music and the library in this next room, and maybe at another time we will have the opportunity to go and see what's going on in this room as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this also is a place where we should remember that signs are not just in the kindergarten, they're in the real world everywhere, if you go to a train station or wherever. So this is good practice.
This is good practice, and this is part of the media literacy plan that we have developed for the Fun Academy kindergarten. So signs are super important to be able to read, and then we discuss the meaning of these signs, and we use these signs also then discussing with children with whom we might not have the same language as well, or children who don't have the capability of understanding words. So imagery is a super good way to also have a dialogue with the children, and that's part of the plan in this environment as well. Also, it's important for educators to have signs in a kindergarten when we have parents visiting, for example. It explains so much more than if the parents just see play going on, if we can at the same time be helping them understand what the children are actually learning and how they're learning and why.
Absolutely. So then, we have reached the end of our Fun Learning Classroom tour. I will bring camera back, hopefully, to us. And we hope you discovered some exciting tips and tricks and ideas that you can already start implementing from tomorrow in your classroom. And perhaps you have some ideas of your own that you could share with us.
Please send us your ideas and inspirations. We're truly wanting to learn more and making this environment more fun as well for these children who we work with.
Absolutely. So stay tuned, because we will continue this adventure where we try to create the most inspiring learning environments for our youngest citizens. And we will come to you live again next week. Remember to like and follow us on Facebook, and hop over to our Facebook group, the Fun Learning Facebook group, where you can find more pictures about inspiring environments and different solutions from us and also from our partners. And well, have fun learning, and we will see you next week.
Have a wonderful week.